Welcome back, YouTube. So today we're going to do a little bit of a different video. I'm going to put myself potentially, as some would say, on blast. I'm going to be very vulnerable, is that the word? And I'm going to talk about something that is a very boo-hiss topic in terms of bodybuilding, gym goers, for females specifically, and I'm going to talk around anabolic steroid use and the thoughts, feelings, things to think about prior to actually going on a cycle. Before you go assisted, there's many things that you do need to think about, and it's not something that you should choose. I guess the word is willy-nilly, and it's definitely not something you should rush into. If you are just coming into the sport of bodybuilding and you're choosing to go assisted straight away, I'd urge you to stop, listen to my video, think about it, and then potentially reconsider the options. And even if you choose to do that, at least you've listened. I've given my own personal experience, my own personal thought process, my own personal views, I guess is the word. I'm not saying that this is science-based, however, likely most of it is. But being a female and not having anybody else talk about it when I first decided to do it, I chose to do it in a very smart way, I guess you could say. You might look at me and think that it's not. Trust me, if you could go to bodybuilding shows, you'd likely say that potentially it was very smart in the way that I have chosen to do it from other things that you see in terms of very bad facial changes, very bad hair thinning, females turning to look a lot more masculine. It is your own choice, but you do tend to find that there are a lot of females that go through the process, get some initial support with that, and then regret it later down the line. I don't regret any of my decisions. I don't regret anything that I've done. I've learned lessons, I've learned from them, and I feel like I've come out mentally and physically quite unscathed, and I'm able to talk about it from an experience point of view and with enough knowledge with myself and clients utilizing that I feel I can talk about it in a very open fashion and also in a way that I'm actually giving benefit to people rather than it just being either demonizing it and saying that bodybuilding shit, saying that steroids are shit, or it could be seen in a very hypocritical sense if I was to do something and then say things completely opposite when it's done, because I hate that. I hate when people come away from bodybuilding. I hate when people come away from utilising PEDs and they choose to blame everything and anything on it other than their own choices. Everything that I've done has been a choice of mine. Any changes that have happened have come up a choice of mine and from doing lots of different research off the back of it. So before you start PEDs as a female, there are a few different things to consider. The first thing is, are you consistent? If you are 100% on your meals, I'm going to say 365 days a year, but we know that we have a couple of days off over Christmas, etc. You are on your meal plan 99% of the year. You are 100% training with all your intent all of the time, and you're not just pushing things to a side. You're not kind of just going in there and going through the motions. You are being 100% committed. One other thing that you're consistent with is the fact that you are a bodybuilder. You are a competitive bodybuilder. You aren't someone who's just going to the gym wanting to look great on holiday, etc. You are a bodybuilder and you are choosing to compete. If you are not, you need to turn off this video and you need to not think about doing PEDs, because if you are not a competitor, why are you risking your health? That goes for both males and females, and I promise you, like, you are risking your health when it comes to it. I'm not demonizing it, but they're the things that you do need to think about. Are you being consistent? If you are not being consistent in all of those metrics, water intake, salt intake, food intake, training consistency, steps consistency, cardio consistency, being able to adhere in an off season and in a diet, PEDs are not going to change the outcome because you're not putting in the work. So the first thing you need to do is, am I being consistent? Am I being 100% in all of those different avenues? If you're not, you don't want to think about taking PEDs. Those things need to have a massive tick in the box first before you choose to take another step in your journey. Another thing that you need to think about is, have you been training for a while? Because if you're someone who's very new to training specifically or new to bodybuilding, what is the reason that you're choosing to go down the route of something that is just, I guess, if we could call it that, sprinkling on the cake? Because if you are not training with intensity, regardless of whether that be high or low volume, and you haven't done that for a consecutive number of years, you don't have a foundation. And then if you don't have a foundation and you've already sprinkled the additional little extras on top, where do you have to go? For me personally, and this is me going very vulnerable here, I was a competitor for the majority of my life. I started dancing when I was 3. I transitioned over to being a gymnast when I was 6, still balancing, dancing. And when I talk about actual goals here, I was dancing at the highest level that you possibly could through to national qualifiers in the West End as a competitive dancer. Gymnastics, I was terrible, but I still did it 4 times a week. And then diving came into the mix when I was 8. So I was doing all those 3 things until I was 14, I believe. Diving was something that I did to the highest level that you could do, the Olympic level diving, and getting European medals, European Championship medals, becoming a champion within Europe, coming 6th in the world. Like, I did it to the highest level that you could possibly do. Alongside the diving was gymnastics training, was weights training. I've been training in the gym, building muscle since I was 3 years old. Started bodybuilding after I finished diving when I was 20, and I did 4.5 years worth of consistent training as a natural athlete before I decided to go down the route of PEDs. So if you're thinking to yourself after a year of competing, after not even really doing an off season, and you're choosing to go down the route of that, like, think twice. There's so many different things that you can do to actually promote your muscle mass. I could have probably chosen to wait a little bit longer and even nail down on my training a little bit more before I chose to go down the route of PEDs. Likely the PEDs would have done more because I would have been in a better place from a progression perspective, from nailing in on the training. And if you don't think that you can make progress without that in a training environment, look at all the incredible natural athletes that there are. If you couldn't make progress, there wouldn't be a very competitive natural league, which does take me on to another thing. Lots of clients, lots of people talk to me about wanting to go down the route of PDs because of one thing. Oh, I'm not going to be competitive if I'm going to be a natural, etc. There's a huge natural league within the IFBB, and that's getting better and better. In the UK, the UKDFBA, the BNBF, the WNBF, that's obviously worldwide, the INPA, or the INBA, one of them. There's so many different federations that you can go down the route of and choose to be competitive in those leagues. If your goal is to be an IFBB pro and potentially not going down the natural route, and you're wanting to choose to go against the other assisted athletes, and you choose to go down the route of assistance, I'm not judging you, because that's what I chose to do. But if you want to be a competitor and the goal isn't potentially to be the Olympia champion, there are options to be in a very competitive league against very good athletes to push yourself down that route as well. So don't feel like the only route is that, because it's not. However, it is a great route, and it's definitely a great goal to achieve if that's what you wanted to do. For me personally, I wanted to be able to go to the Olympia. I wanted to be able to stand on the stage against the best of the best when it comes to figure athletes within the IFBB, which is one of the reasons why I chose to go down the route of becoming an assisted athlete. Another thing to consider when you choose to become an assisted bodybuilder is, have you done your blood work? One small thing that I would say about your blood work is it does not tell you whether you are fertile or whether you aren't fertile anymore. So you could have peak blood work, but you could simply still not have a menstrual cycle, and you could also still not be fertile, especially when it comes to becoming an assisted athlete. So that's one thing to consider if you do choose that route. But to begin with, before you even consider it, have you had your bloods done? Have you checked your hormones? Have you checked your lipid profile? Have you checked your cholesterol levels? All these different things and all these different markers, they need to be considered. If you don't have great blood work anyway, you have issues with your kidneys, you have issues with your cholesterol, you have issues with your hormones, PEDs are only going to make that worse. They're not going to make them any better. Apart from if you're someone who potentially is a little bit older, going through the menopause, going through the change as a guy, and they're obviously promoting to utilize TRT, which is a very small dose of testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, whatever it is that you obviously need to utilize, maybe some thyroid. You will obviously reap the benefits of something like that, but kind of heavy cycles, on blast cycles, are only going to make these different health complications worse. So before you consider going down the route of PEDs, get your blood work checked. Get your blood work checked. Make sure that everything is aligned in that first before you choose to go down the route of assistance. And if you do choose to go assisted, it is your responsibility to get your blood work done. Minimum, in my opinion, would be every 12 weeks. If you're able to get it done more frequently than that because funds allow, then do, because the more that you can check, the more that you can stay on top of it, the less likely chance you have of things getting complicated in a negative perspective. Another thing to consider is, have you done your own research? I often have consultations, even conversations with just other competitors that go down the route of obviously blaming their coaches for the PEDs that have been put in place. Yes, there are more female-friendly PEDs compared to others. There's some PEDs that have been heavily researched in the female body that have, yes, created virilization, but potentially not had massive impacts when it comes to health markers, massive risks when it's come to fertility, monthly cycles, etc. But there is still that risk of things not going extremely well. So if you haven't done your research in understanding what these different compounds do, then why are you putting something in your body that you don't understand? We have the anavars, the primos, the MPPs, the mastron, growth hormone, insulin, etc. All these different things, and then you go down the route of orals. I've already spoken about anavar. We have the winstrels. I've even seen stacks of cycles for females that have had trembolone in. So if you're going down the route of wanting to become assisted, do your research. Don't decide that your coach is going to know everything. Don't choose to put all of your trust in your coach. And I'm talking about that to my clients that will obviously be watching this video as well. Do your own research. Understand what it is that you're putting in your body. I'm sure that 90% of people that do this, that are listening to this video, you'll get a chest infection or you've got a cough and you start searching on Google, what does it mean if I've got a raspy cough and phlegm coming up? And all of a sudden it tells you all these different things that could potentially be the reason why you're dying. But then you choose to go down the route of being assisted, pop in an androgen and not do any research on it. It kind of speaks volumes. So if you are choosing to go down the route of becoming assisted, do your research. Don't trust that somebody's going to know what's best, because the only person that knows best for you and your body and the risks that you're willing to take is yourself. So do research, do some reading. Might be boring. There's plenty of videos on YouTube talking about different androgens from a female perspective as well as a male perspective. If you are a male that is listening to it, be a good person or be a good athlete or just be someone who's making wise choices. Choose what you are willing to do and understand what it is that you are putting in your body. Another thing to take into consideration if you are choosing to go down the route of PEDs is, what is your own risk versus reward ratio? Everybody's different. I have or had my own catalyst as to which I was willing to change, both from a physical perspective as well as a physiological perspective as well as a mental perspective. I had my goals in mind, but I had my own catalyst as to which I was willing to push. I think a lot of people go down the route of PEDs and they go past that catalyst. They go past the level that they were initially willing to push. And I'm not willing to do that, which is the reason why I've chosen to take a step away from the PEDs. I've essentially built the mass that I need, so I don't need that anymore. I can maintain what I have and probably grow some if I need to without that. So my goal and the changes that I've had, I've hit the level of which I would like to, which is the reason why I've made that change. But that's not going to stop me from competing. It's not going to stop me from doing the progressions. But I think people often get lost. And I think that they often take it further than what they initially wanted to. When it comes to utilizing PEDs, you have to remember at the end of it, if I don't achieve the goals that I've chosen and put out in front of me, will I blame the fact that I've gone assisted, not blame it, but regret the fact that I've gone assisted and still not been able to achieve my goals? I think a lot of people would, yes. Would I put the PEDs down or regret it if I wasn't to have achieved so far the things that I've set out to achieve? No, because I've still stuck to the things of which I had my limit to hit in. So if that goalpost with the levels to which you're willing to push doesn't change, I don't think that you can ever really come away from it regretting it. But if you choose to make that decision, it is your risk. It's your own risk that you're choosing. And if you're happy with that, obviously you can do what it is that you would like to do. But the things that you have to think about when it comes to risks, especially as a female, are, and a lot of you will watch my YouTubes, you'll have seen changes that happen. There's lots that change physically. Your face can change a lot. I don't find that my face has changed too much. It does when I'm in an off season, heavily in an off season, it gets very large. My chin has definitely got larger than what it was when I first initially started. My voice is definitely deeper. People can often get hair growth in areas that they don't want anymore. I've not really been one to have been affected by that massively. But again, that's not to say that you wouldn't. So it's something that you need to think about. There's changes that can happen to your fertility in that long-term use or even short-term use. Like people can do one cycle and it can affect it massively. Everybody's really different. You could go from being fertile to not anymore. And some people might be able to reverse that and get it better, but other people may not. There might be monthly cycle changes in that you don't bleed anymore, and you might again be able to make that better through stopping it and working on it, but you also may not. So these types of things are risks that can happen that you need to choose that you will be okay with them if that happens to you, because everybody is different. Everybody gets affected by PEDs. Like everybody gets affected by coffee different. So coffee for me makes me very shaky, makes me very on edge. For someone like Cuba, he gets a little bit of a mover and groover with his thermogenesis and gets him moving a little bit, but he's fine. So we all get affected really differently. It's like when you're younger and people go down the route of substances when they're out and about partying. Some people will get more affected than others. PEDs are exactly the same. So if you're choosing to look at your favourite bodybuilder, they've gone down these different cycles, they've not seen these types of changes, that doesn't mean that that's not going to happen to you. So that's the one thing that you do have to consider when it comes to going down the route of PEDs. One thing that people often don't speak about, and actually really don't speak about, especially from a female perspective, is the mental aspect. Because as a female myself, when I'm on cycle, I feel a lot more confident. I feel a lot more, I guess the word is more egotistical. You feel like the weight of the world isn't on you anymore, and you can go through life and you can, the word isn't cocky because I've never been someone that's extremely cocky, but you definitely have that extra boost of confidence. The cycle gets pulled and then you go through a real big loop. And I'm someone who's very mentally level-headed. I haven't struggled with mental health issues throughout my life. So I went into utilizing PEDs knowing that I've never been someone to get massively affected by that. However, PEDs made me a little bit that way in that I would feel really great when I was on cycle. I'd feel not so great when I was off. I mean, I used very small cycles, 8 weeks, and then I'd have up to 24 weeks off. 18 to 24 weeks was like the minimum time that I'd have off between. The only time that that's ever been shorter was last year when obviously I went from one prep to the Olympia prep, which is obviously very small and condensed compared to usual. But I would have a long time off to regenerate my, I guess, physical health, yes, but also from a mental aspect too. If you're someone who struggles with mental health anyway, you're a female who struggles with really bad anxiety, really bad depression, PEDs are only going to make that worse. I could probably use a more in-depth way to explain that. So if your favourite competitive bodybuilder who's at the Olympia level potentially hasn't got these changes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not utilising things. Maybe they've just not had the maybe they just haven't had the side effects, but that doesn't mean that that's not going to happen to you. So if you are choosing to go down the route of assistance, be aware that that could potentially happen to you. Exactly the same when it comes to your mindset. If you are someone who has struggled with depression, anxiety, up and down low feels, feeling like you want to isolate yourself a lot rather than being in a social environment, etc., especially from a very extreme point of view, you will only find that PEDs will make that worse. I definitely have gone through times, especially post competitions, when that kind of big goal's been there and then it's not there anymore. You obviously make smaller goals and look to what the future is going to bring in terms of next big goal. You take out the PEDs and you have the post competition feels as well. It's pretty like a low bottom feeling, even if you've been successful within that actual competitive season. So if you do struggle mentally and you are someone who's very up and down, and be honest with yourself, have you gone to the doctors, spoken about mental health? Do you speak about mental health with your friends, with your family? Have you been potentially someone who's gone to the doctors to speak about SSRIs, antidepressants, etc.? If you choose to go down the route of assistance, it is not going to make it better. You'll feel fantastic when you're on cycle. Absolutely amazing. And I'm not trying to make PEDs sound glamorous, but you will feel fantastic. You will have much better mental health, clearer vision, etc. For some time until you start to have used it for a little bit of time, and then obviously you don't have them positive feels anymore. But then afterwards you will get them lower feels. And if you're someone who goes up and down with that anyway, you'll find that the peaks and the troughs are far worse. So if you do struggle with your mental health, it's potentially something that you want to think about really in depth before you start to go down the route of it, because it is going to make it worse. And we tend to find that there's lots of females that come away from bodybuilding that have struggled with their mental health before, and they then struggle with it more so after bodybuilding, and they blame bodybuilding. But essentially, like I've said halfway through, and I'm someone who's gone through that from experience, so I can say that you're choosing your own risks. You have made that own choice yourself. If you're listening to other people and what they recommend, again, you're choosing to go with that. You are your own person. You should be old enough to make your own decisions if you're going down the route of choosing to use PEDs. So you need to decide that that is the right thing for you and that you are mentally strong enough to be able to do that. Because if you're not, you can find that it really, really affects you. And if you are someone that comes away from bodybuilding and chooses to demonize bodybuilding, chooses to demonize PEDs, and you've chosen to make those decisions, you're only essentially demonizing your own decisions. And that essentially is, without sounding awful, telling yourself that you're a little bit of a silly Billy, because you are choosing to make the choices to go down the routes of PEDs, and you are choosing the risks that PEDs come with as well. So it all essentially comes down to, are you willing to accept the consequences? Are you willing to accept the physical changes, the physiological changes? Are you willing to choose the mental changes that can happen? If not, potentially it's something that can be left for now and thought about in the future if you do want to. Or if it is something that you are going to go down the route of, you need to be accepting that you are choosing to make those decisions as you step forwards throughout your journey. One last thing to consider, both as a male or a female, once you've chosen to go down the route of PEDs and you come away from them, which you're not going to bodybuild, you're not going to compete forever. Not everyone can do that, and 95% of people definitely can't do that. You have to be accepted, or sorry, you have to accept that your natural levels aren't necessarily, in terms of hormones, going to always come back to normal, and 99% of people do not. So as a male especially, you are choosing the fact that you are going to be on TRT for life. You're going to have to use hormone replacement to be able to keep things like your testosterone levels in a great spot. If you're someone who goes on blast, and even if you're someone who cruises and blasts, so stay, it's obviously on a PD cycle stack and then cruises on like a TRT dose. If you choose to come off that later down the line, you'll probably find that your natural levels aren't going to come back to life. Even those who do blasts or full cycles and then come off completely, you'll find that later down the line, because you've used and used and used, that your natural levels again aren't going to come back. Females are very similar in that if you've been even running very small cycles and having a long time off, a lot of females end up going through the menopause a lot earlier that choose to go on PEDs. You tend to find that their actual natural levels, even a little bit of time after bodybuilding, can take a very long time to either recover or might never actually recover ever again. So if you're choosing to go down the route of that, take all of these things into consideration and choose if that's your own risk consequence that you're willing to take. And if it is, go with it. Make smart decisions, do your own research, and make sure that you stay smart with your approach. I'm not going to say safe or risk-free, because there is definitely not a safe way or a risk-free way to be able to utilize, because it's a risky thing. But you can definitely do it in a smarter sense to try and help these changes that can happen be hopefully minimal for you. Again, like I said at the start of the video, you might look at me and think, oh, why have you chosen to make the changes and you can feel your voice? Why have you chosen to make those changes and you can see the physical changes? For me, that was an accepting risk that I was willing to take for the goals that I wanted to achieve. I've got to a point where I've essentially made enough changes with my physical appearance that I don't want to take anymore. But I wouldn't change anything that I've done, because I've had that risk versus reward ratio in my mind that I've stuck with. If you can stick with it, you'll probably come out unscathed in the fact that you'll not regret anything. And that's potentially the biggest decision to make, or the best case scenario outcome at the end. If you choose to do it, do research, listen to my video over and over again, choose that the consequences or the risks that can happen are okay with you. Go with it, make great progress, let the world be your oyster when it comes to that route. If you choose that those risks aren't worth it, don't go with it, because again, it is your choice. I made my choices. I chose to go down the route of it. I would never demonize it. I would never tell anyone not to do it. But I would recommend for everybody to think about all those different things, make a decision on if that is worth it for you, and choose the path that is more ideal for you, not your favorite influencer, not your favorite bodybuilder on the stage, because it is your decision, it is your life. And the last thing that I'll leave you with, you can create a fantastic physique without utilizing PEDs. You have the natural realms that you can go down the route of and compete within and do incredibly well. If you are not a competitor, don't utilize PEDs. You can utilize hard training, good steps, cardio, a good diet to have a fantastic physique. So they are not a necessity. Obviously, if you choose the path for specific routes that maybe they're more likely to become part of the agenda. It is your decision. It is your risks. It is your body. It is your life. What do you choose for you, and what do you choose for your future self? Those things need to be considered, because I did. I stuck with what I was willing to push with, and I never changed my mind. So be decisive. If you ever need someone to chat to about it with, please feel free to DM me, because I'm an open book. I'm very honest, and I'm happy to talk about it with anybody. If you did like my video, please feel free to drop a comment below with anything else that you would like me to cover. Please like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll be back for another video. Thank you.